degrees or something like that. Like that seems very South Carolina.
That would not surprise me. That it's been cold this entire time. Yeah, it's 23 degrees here in Fort Mill as I'm here for a few days before going to Clemson tomorrow for basketball. But yeah, man, I mean, next Wednesday right now is as far as it goes on the 10-day forecast on the iPhone weather app. 59 degrees next Wednesday. So okay. I believe that's Christmas Eve.
That is Christmas Eve.
We will know tomorrow for sure. It's probably going to be in the 50s, I would guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've only seen Christmas, or I think I've only seen snow on Christmas once in my entire life, and it wasn't even like thick. It was like just a dusting. So okay. I don't ever get my anticipation up that I'm ever going to see that. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think I've seen snow on Christmas here in Fort Mill in South Carolina, matter of fact, ever. So yeah, it probably won't happen.
Well, besides that, a lot of things happening this weekend. We'll get into plenty of those coming up in just a moment. But first, as always, 9 a.m. Got to kick things off with Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. We'll call this a Reaction Monday because there are things to react to, though this is the first non-traditional weekend of college football we've had since the season began. What was your football viewing habits for the weekend, Jack?
Watched a little bit of Army-Navy on Saturday. Saturday was a busy day since I was with my girlfriend's parents for a bit. So and then hanging out with Caroline. So it was definitely a busy weekend on that end. And then yesterday watched a lot of the Bills game. I was very
good game,
excited.
Fun game,
great game. Watched. God, what was the fourth? Watched a lot of Red Zone in the 4 o'clock window. So I watched a bunch of games. Saw the Panthers lost on a field goal. I mean, my gosh, man.
What is happening in the NFC South?
What is happening in the NFC South? I don't get it, Tyler. I truly don't. I'm sure the Falcons still mathematically have a chance.
No, they're eliminated, but they beat the Bucs the other day. Okay. And so are the Saints, and they beat the Panthers.
Crazy, yeah. And then fell asleep to Sunday Night Football last night. So what about you?
Yeah, I watched a good bit of Celebration Bowl on Saturday. Shout out to SC State. Crazy comeback win there. 4 overtimes. Chennis Berry getting his first ever HBCU national championship. That was awesome. We did go out, do some last minute. I'm still not done with Christmas shopping. There's a couple things I still have to get. I'm a terrible like gift giver. I never know what people want unless you tell me. So a lot of it for me is like going to stores and looking around, being like, yeah, I guess that'll work. So trying to finalize some of that on Saturday. Got home for basically the second half of Army-Navy as we were like decorating. I know decorating on December 13th is kind of late, but that was our first chance to get to it. So we did put our tree up and everything and watched Army-Navy in the process.
Jeez, yeah, I did some Christmas shopping on Saturday as well. I think I'm about done, honestly. I got to get 1 or 2 more things for my girlfriend, but now it's just a matter of, here's the thing with shopping. Half of it's online,
yes.
So you're waiting on all these different things to come in, and most of them have come in, but it's like now you're waiting and waiting. It's like, oh, shoot, we're, 10 days away from Christmas Day, so
yep.
like, let's get it in here quick. But, yeah, man, busy weekend, lots going on, and glad we have some football. Oh, I also watched a little bit of the Boise State game on Saturday, which looked to be a real blowout.
The bucked up LA Bowl, yeah, and yes, it was a blowout.
Yes, just not a good game.
Yeah, if you forgot bowl season had started, I wouldn't blame you because, and it's all because of the playoff. Like typically, bowl season would have started this upcoming weekend because the playoffs basically take up Friday and Saturday. You have a couple bowl games on Friday that lead into it, but no bowl games on Saturday. So you start them early. We'll get another bowl game coming up tomorrow and more throughout the week. But yeah, I'm still not quite used to that yet. Though it is cool, if you wanted to flip over to a bowl game after the Heisman Trophy ceremony was over, you had that. We did have Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman Trophy, by the way. Not surprising. It is just kind of like this new reality of like, oh my God, Indiana's the #1 team and they have the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. What is happening?
it's an alternate reality, and then a Vanderbilt quarterback finishing in second. I mean, it's
A very bitter Vanderbilt quarterback at that.
Yeah, I thought Pavia was going to win, and then I'm not surprised with how he handled it, but I am, because he's like, I don't know, it's just ridiculous the way he kind of reacted to it. But anyway, I mean, that's I think Pavia probably should have won. I think the stats were pretty much equal for the most part, with Pavia having better rushing numbers. But hey, you're not going to turn down the opportunity to have the new nickname for Heisman Doza.
Yeah, which I thought the Adidas ad that they put out after the fact was pretty neat. Did you see that?
Yeah, no, I like it, because he recently just signed a partnership with Adidas, which makes it all the more better, since Indiana is also a Adidas school.
Yeah, he's the best flipping player in the nation.
Yes, his speech also didn't sound too bad.
No,
so
it was good.
I thought his voice would be like all like I'm not gonna do it on air here, but him freaking out like he usually does in post-game interviews.
No, it was a good composed speech. I've gotten to the point now where I only tune in for about the last 10 minutes of the Heisman ceremony. Because, I mean, there's nothing wrong. I get it. It's a TV show. It's an hour-long presentation. But, they show highlight packages, and they interview the players. They interview their parents. They interview the coaches. Like, I don't feel the need to sit down and watch all that. I've got it down to a science where I know in the last 10 minutes they will finally announce the winner. They'll get up there and give their speech, and then that's it. That's really the only part you actually need to see.
No, I agree. I mean, I was watching pretty much all of it, and it's like you could just see they're talking to the family, like literally what you said. It really is a waste of time up until you get up to the beginning. Even the schedule drop for the SEC on Thursday, I think it was. My goodness, man. I mean, it's a 2-hour special, and that thing is wasting so much time talking about 1 month, and then, commercial break, and then analysis about that month, and then more commercials. It's just, by the time we found out South Carolina's schedule, it was almost an hour in. It's crazy.
Well, and the funny thing, I know you were on your way to the presser the other day, so you didn't really to dive into it too much, but the funny thing about Carolina being so late in that list is you can almost figure out the schedule by the time they get there, because you're looking at other teams' schedules saying, okay, well, they're going to play Alabama then, or they're going to play Georgia then, or they're going to play Tennessee then, or whatever it may be. Well, I guess Tennessee would have come after them. But, yeah, by the time you get to Carolina, like, the surprise is almost kind of gone. And it's like, well, yeah, I know pretty much every game they're going to be playing, but at that point, I guess Tennessee and A&M.
Yeah, I mean, by the time, because the way they did it was different, where they would break it down week by week of every team at the same time. By the time they got to week 12, I want to say, with Arkansas, it was like, oh, okay, well, we already know who's playing the last home game, and that's Georgia. So, I mean, yeah, it was easy to just figure it out from there. But, yeah, it's just very tedious. And same thing with the Heisman ceremony. I mean, you got to have it for an hour. I get it, but it definitely could be over in like 10 minutes, honestly.
Yeah, it's all part of it. But again, congratulations to Fernando Mendoza. We'll get into what he had to say as part of his speech a little bit later on in the show. Crazy day in the NFL yesterday. You talked about the Bills with their comeback. Got down 21-0 to the Patriots on the road. Were able to mount that comeback and outscored them 35-10 down the stretch to win that game. Ended the Patriots' 10-game winning streak.
Yeah, look, as Mike Ewa put it, a diehard Patriots fan, he tells me that, like the Patriots needed to lose a game. And I think that's the mindset that the Patriots have right now, is that they needed to learn how to lose again or something. Whatever that means. I don't know. You were up 21-0 and blew that game. So, that doesn't really sound like learning how to lose to me. But the Bills are such a good second-half team that you can never really count them out. Even with how bad they looked defensively at times, they picked it up in the second half, made a few key stops at the end of the game, and, of course, Josh Allen doing what he does. Who do you feel like is the NFL? Like, who is your top 3 right now in this MVP race? Like, I feel like Josh Allen has kind of played himself back into things.
I think he's playing himself back into it. Drake, Stafford's probably number 1. I think May's 2, and then I guess I have to look at the numbers of everybody to see, but you can make the argument that Josh Allen's probably at least around number 3.
I'm gonna also agree that Stafford's probably one. Right now, I mean, I don't know. Josh Allen outdueled Drake May yesterday. And I know Drake May's got, the great stats and all that stuff, and he's led a really good Patriots team to the success that no one really anticipated them having. But you got to think about it. If the Bills don't have Josh Allen, this team is maybe a 4 or 5 win team. I mean, they are night and day difference without him at quarterback. So I think you probably got to put him at second right now. But yeah, unless something happens with Stafford over the next few weeks, he's probably winning this thing.
Speaking of quarterbacks, not only do the Chiefs get eliminated from playoff contention, also Patrick Mahomes suffers a torn ACL and is done for the year.
Yeah, just kind of crazy to process everything right there. Of not only are the Chiefs eliminated from the playoffs, 6-8 on the year, but their star quarterback, who's always been healthy, is now going to be out for the rest of the season, and I think he'll probably be ready for 2026, but who knows with the recovery of the torn ACL. So, you hope Mahomes will be okay, but man, I mean, that's definitely a tough blow to kind of end the season here, and I think we're going to start seeing a little bit of a domino effect of Travis Kelce retires, a few key players leave. Who knows what happens with Chris Jones? I mean, they're gonna have to rebuild themselves up a little bit this offseason. And I think this is a bit of a reality check that, things aren't always going to be great.
Yeah, wild weekend in the NFL. Obviously, South Carolina not playing football this weekend, though we did get some very good news about the prospects for 2026, and we'll talk about that coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry with you on your Monday here on The Game. All right, here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you about it all the time, but I'm happy to remind you once again, you always need to be on the lookout for things around your home that are a little bit off. Things include cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems around your home, you could have serious foundation issues, and that's where our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com, and they'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live worry-free going forward. Again, don't wait. These issues will only get worse. Go online to schedule an appointment at cantycanfix.com and let our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist help you out with your foundation needs.
Just to be completely honest, like ASAP, because as we've told them, I want you here, but we can't sit around and wait forever. That there's a portal that's getting ready to open up. Let's be real, there's a financial aspect of it where if you're not coming back, well, that's a financial aspect that is now available to others to either bring in or to keep in our own program that I want to reward. So it's just part of it. So yeah, the longer this thing goes, it's not good. So ASAP. Have I put a hard deadline on anyone? No, but it's kind of one of those that right now, Jack, like if you want to be here, great. If not, cool. But I'm on the 2026 and doing everything that I have to do to get ready for 2026. And the Clemson game was almost 3 weeks ago. Like we've moved on and we're on the 26th, and you're either with us or you're not.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hour. Head and Jack Velcher along with you here on your Monday on the Game. That was Coach Beamer Friday after introducing all of his new assistants, talking to the media scrum there, saying, hey, if you want to be here, great. If not, good for you. We'll move on to somebody else. And obviously when he's saying those kind of things, you're hoping that he's implying that somebody like Lenore Sellers is going to be willing to come back for 2026. And over the weekend, we did get the reports first from Pete Thamel of ESPN that South Carolina, we got to be sure we're phrasing this right, is working towards finalizing the deal with Lenore Sellers, because that's the new age of college sports that we're in, where we have to phrase it that way. But all indications do seem to point to the fact that Sellers will be back for 2026.
God, can you imagine hearing 10 years ago that this would be the reality of college football, that we have to phrase things like that, and that players are negotiating and getting deals signed? I mean, it's insane the times we're in college athletics right now, but that's the world we're in. And yeah, so doesn't sound like it's 100% done, but it seems that South Carolina will have Lenore's back under center heading into the 2026 season, which I think can be the real next check mark off the list of many things to do this offseason.
Well, that's one major sigh of relief, right? Because as excited as we were about the prospect of Kendall Briles coming in as the offensive coordinator, the question of, okay, who's your quarterback's going to be was the biggest thing that we needed answered. And it's like, okay, well, if Sellers doesn't come back, you look at the quarterback room that you have nobody that's ever started a game before. And yeah, you had a guy like Aaron Noland, who has high upside based on his high school prospects and all that, but for whatever reason took a significant step back this year because he wasn't even second on the depth chart, by the end of the year, to go out and get somebody in the portal. Is there somebody that can come over from TCU with Kendall Briles? There would have been a lot of uncertainty around the quarterback position the entire offseason until we saw things to prove otherwise next year. But Sellers, and yes, he didn't have the best season this year, but you know what his potential is, and the belief is, of course, that Mike Shula was the one that was ultimately holding him back, and that plugging him into this Kendall Briles offense can take him back to where he was the year before, if not higher.
Yeah, you're certainly hoping that's the case, right? And I think there is a good chance that we'll see. There's no other choice but to see a better version of Lenore Sellers at this point, because I think we're going to, based on the fact of we've seen Kendall Briles run the RPO a lot with different quarterbacks like RG3 and De'Aaron King and KJ Jefferson. Like, we've seen mobile quarterbacks work in a Kendall Briles offense that's 3 different schools right there, at Baylor, Houston, and Arkansas. And even with a non-mobile quarterback and a guy like Josh Hoover recently at TCU has been much more of a what you maybe would call like a gunslinger. Like, that guy can throw the ball all over the yard, threw for nearly, I think, 4,000 passing yards like 2 seasons ago. I mean, this guy, Briles can work with different quarterbacks, as we've seen, but I think he definitely is best suited to work with a quarterback that has a skill set of Lenore's. So that's a really intriguing prospect to look at heading into 2026.
And I will say this, because we've been talking about this for the past couple weeks of what Sellers is going to do. And, he gave the answer that every player gives when asked about it after the Clemson game a couple weeks ago. I'm going to evaluate my options, talk to my family and all that kind of stuff. And I genuinely thought that he would probably go ahead and go to the draft, right? And yeah, this season wasn't great, but a lot of experts still had him as a projected first-round pick, maybe a later first-round pick than what we initially thought going into the year, but a first-round pick nonetheless, which is obviously incredible money, the opportunity to go and learn within a system of a place that maybe already had an established quarterback that you're waiting to, the last couple years of their career, like in LA with like the Rams with Matt Stafford or something along those lines. I just thought the draft prospects might have been too high to pass up. But again, if he comes back in 2026, has an incredible year in Kendall Briles' offense, he could work himself back to being the potential number one overall pick for all we know. So there is reason to want to come back in addition to the money side of things. And that's, funny enough, like the least important part of all this, I feel like, when we've talked about it in the past couple of weeks, because we know Sellers had his opportunity to leave, right? He got more money offered to him by Auburn. That's been confirmed in the offseason, but he wanted to stay true to South Carolina, wanted to stay home. His dad's like, what do you need with all that extra money? You're doing fine. So I wasn't necessarily worried about that aspect. And, even though Todd McShay said Miami's going to throw a bag at him, and maybe they did, but the money wasn't something that was that high of a concern. It was, okay, does he want to go to the NFL or does he want to stay and develop one more year in college? And thankfully for us here, he's going to do the latter.
And, he'll get the money being at South Carolina. I don't think that's a worry, right? He could probably make – I don't know exactly what he would make as a rookie in the NFL if he were drafted in the first round. I think it really depends on where. But let's say it's later first round. He could probably make as much money coming back to school for a year compared to what he would make in his first year as an NFL rookie. I mean, he is going to do just fine in college money-wise for another year. But I think from a development standpoint, he definitely needs another year. We saw that evident this year. You can draft him based off his raw potential and the skills that you think he has and the upside potential that you think he has as well. But you're more likely than not, you're stuffing him on the bench for a year or two. You're taking the traditional approach to developing a young quarterback over time, sitting behind the veteran until that guy's ready. But the thing about Lenoris is the last time you saw him play full time, would have been this year, and he did not look great this season. So I think for him, he probably feels he needs another year to really up his stock a little bit more to become a top 5 pick, Heisman Trophy candidate, all the things we thought he was going to do this year, and then go into the draft next year, make all that money he will make as a top 5 pick, and then be, potential starter right out of the gate to where he's already undergone a big year of development in his last year in college.
The biggest question becomes, can Kendall Briles undo what Mike Shula did, right? Because we felt like Sellers was in a pretty good place coming away from his first year as a starter under Dow Loggins. But again, it made all the sense in the world to go on with Mike Shula because he's the one that had been the quarterback coach and seemingly developed him to that point. And we were giving maybe Shula more credit than Dow Loggins at the end of the 2024 season. So, okay, another offseason with this guy will get him to an even higher place, and that obviously didn't happen. So can Kendall Briles undo what Mike Shula did to get the best version of Sellers by the time the next season rolls around? It's going to be the biggest question of this offseason.
No, you're right. Totally is. I think they should be able to, right? I think Lenoris is a good enough player to adjust back to what worked 2 seasons ago under Dow Loggins, where the ball was in his hands a lot more often and he was making plays. I imagine that's going to be heightened tremendously this season. If they're building the offense around him, which is what Kendall Briles word for word said that the plan is going to be, then I think there's going to be a lot of success that comes with that for sure.
We'll get into what Kendall Briles did have to say about Lenoir Sellers and the offense on Friday when he was formally introduced to everybody here at South Carolina, coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher with you here on your Monday on the Game. Again, talking about Lenore Sellers returning for 2026. And again, got to make sure I phrase this right. This is per Pete Thamel, and Pete Nakos also confirming this report over the weekend that South Carolina working to finalize the deal with Lenore Sellers. So still got to be signed on the dotted line at the end of the day. But again, when you have these national outlets talking about these things, that typically means they are almost certain to happen. Again, waiting for the official confirmation, but it does seem to be trending in that direction that Sellers will be back for 2026 and get to play within this Kendall Briles offense. And when Briles was introduced to everybody on Friday, did talk about, Jack, as you just mentioned a moment ago, that they're going to build this offense around Sellers. And I guess the implication at that point in time was if he's decided to return. But I would imagine when Kendall Briles took this job, it's like you almost think he had to have known ahead of time, right? He didn't say anything, didn't say that, hey, he's definitely coming back or whatever. But I got to imagine this job is a whole lot more enticing knowing you have a talent like that at quarterback as opposed to you're going to come in here and then you're going to have to go in the portal and get somebody or develop these guys that have never started before. There had to have been, in my mind, some pretty strong indication of what was probably going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. 100% right about that. Look, if Lenore's, you were hoping Lenore's was going to be here if you're coming in as the offensive coordinator. Like we heard Shane Beamer talk about that a few weeks ago of, he had coaches interested in this job as the OC, and they were wondering, is Lenore's going to be here? It's also, is Nick Harbor going to be here, right? You want to coach these guys to have the best version of the offense that you think you can run, and it's with those guys, as the star leaders returning on your offense. We don't know about Nick Harbor yet, but it sounds like Sellers is getting closer to being a Gamecock once again in 2026. And even if not, if Briles had come in and Sellers wasn't going to be here, he could probably bring in a good quarterback, to fill that void. But it's a lot easier knowing that you have Sellers back under center.
Well, and look, I want to see Harbor come back too. That would just kind of complete the puzzle in a lot of ways on offense. Still got some other areas you have to address, obviously, but that would be a huge return, especially considering how those guys seem to really develop good chemistry with each other this year as the season wore along. But if you had to choose between Lenore Sellers or Nick Harbor coming back, you're going to choose Lenore Sellers. Like, as good as Harbor has become, not that he is replaceable, so to speak, but obviously the quarterback is what stirs the drink of the offense, and that's what you need to have figured out first. So if you had to pick between the two, you got the better of the two options, though there's still the opportunity for Harbor to return. We'll see what he decides to do. Not any reporting out there of which way he's going to go at this point in time, and he could go to the draft just because he's somebody that, based on his physical ability, is probably going to be taken pretty high at the end of the day, regardless of what his college stats ultimately ended up looking like. But if he could come back too, that'd be even better.
You'd like to have Nick Harbor back. He had a really good season this year, and I think there's still some room to have like that Xavier Legette type of breakout season where you go for over 1,000 yards and you become a bona fide first-round pick. I wonder where teams in the NFL would have Harbor right now in their draft grades and all that, what round he could go. I would imagine maybe like early second, third, fourth round maybe. But if Harbor feels like he can come back and be a first-round pick after next year, more power to him. I think he really could do some good things in this Briles offense as well.
So let's hear a little bit of what Kendall Briles did have to say on Friday when he talked about installing the new offense here at South Carolina.
I don't think he had a playbook because he didn't want anybody to be able to get it. I think that was kind of the biggest deal about not never having one. Obviously we're going to have one and talk to the offense today about that as soon as we can get them information and get them going when they come in here in January. And I'm sure we'll have some skills and drills where we're able to do some things throughout the offseason. It's imperative. Obviously the more they know, the faster they can go play, so they're not having to think on the field. So, it's huge that we get that information to them as fast as we can while we're learning our personnel and what these guys can do.
And look, it's going to be a process. That's going to be one of the major storylines of the offseason, as well as how do these guys plug into this new system. And again, you're going to have a lot of activity in the portal, having to get offensive linemen, having to get running backs. Again, we'll see what they do at receiver, depending on if Harbor's coming back or not. So you're going to have new faces coming in, but there's going to be a lot of guys returning too. And we've run through the list of guys. Brady Hunt also confirmed to return over the weekend. So you got one of your main tight ends going to be coming back next season as well. But how do these guys fit within this offense? Because not everybody can run in a veer and shoot type of offense, and that's what the off-season workouts, spring practice can be evaluating how these guys fit within your system. And maybe there are some guys, like especially out of this group of young wide receivers that came in this past year, where again we saw obviously Jaden Sellers, saw Brian Rowe, guys like that, Donovan Murph, get some playing time, but is somebody else within that room better fit for what Kendall Briles wants to do, like Alex Cyrus? Is he going to get more run next year? Those are the questions that we have to answer as the offseason goes along to make sure, again, for the sake of Beamer's job at the end of the day, this offense be as good as it can be for next season.
That's the big question, is how do the returning players fit into all this? I think my question specifically is with the offensive line, right? Because you need a really quick moving center to kind of, we talk about the quarterback running this ship here. Really, it starts on the offensive line with the center. So is that going to be Boaz Stanley? I don't think many people were very impressed by Boaz's play this season, myself included. Just not what you signed up for, honestly, at center on the offensive line. Or maybe is it Nolan Hay running the show? Actually, wait, he doesn't have another year of eligibility, right? So
I think
he's out. I think he's out of eligibility. So apologies for that. But I think
according to this, he looks like he has another year.
Okay.
Because whoever does y'all's depth chart or the eligibility chart for Gamecock Central does have Hay still with another year, so he can come back.
Let's hope that's the case then. But yeah, I would definitely say it's of the utmost importance to figure out who your center is going to be, or who your centers are going to be potentially going into next season, whether that is returning guys or going out and getting somebody else. Maybe there's an offensive lineman at TCU that Briles feels so super comfortable with that helped run that offense particularly well, and maybe that's a guy that he brings in. I'm not sure. But you definitely got to figure out that offensive line as well with all this.
And that's something else that Randy Clements, or Coach Clem, as I guess we're going to refer to him now, spoke about on Friday is, the identity of the offensive line here at Carolina.
Identity, the first thing we want to be is effective. Whatever we're doing, running the ball or throwing it, and we believe that everything starts with the run game. It sets up the opportunities for bigger plays down the field. But our guys, they have to play together. They have to play hard. They have to strain, and they have to give us chances to get downhill and make positive yards every time we hand the ball off. And then we don't want our quarterback to have a bunch of grass stains on him at the end of the day. So, those things, every O-line wants to be, but there's a process to it, and it's not really sexy to talk about or anything like that. But it's a daily grind. Just try to constantly improve each day, little by little, and then, head it up at the end.
And that's the tricky part about offensive line that we talk about so much, is that chemistry and continuity, right? And even having a full off season doesn't mean, a group of 5 guys is always going to gel the best. Now, you look at, the prospects of guys that are returning. You got the opportunity to return both your tackles. And again, this can all change with guys deciding to go to the portal and all that kind of stuff, but you can get both of your tackles back from this past year. Case and Henry, again, injury plagued throughout his career, but can come back next year. You can get a couple of your starting centers in Boaz Stanley and Nolan Hay. Trevon Boss, Ced Jarrett, all those guys can come back. Are they your starters? I don't know. I would think certainly not all of them, considering how poor the offensive line played. So do you go out and do you replace the entire group? Do you replace half of them? What do you decide to do in the portal is going to be the big question. And then it becomes okay, can you get that unit to work and gel together like a functional offensive line needs to be, which that's all going to be on the plate of Randy Clements this offseason to try and figure out.
And I think that chemistry that those two guys already have working together over the years will help out a lot in this. They know what they like, and they're going to go out there and get it this offseason. Like, I don't think it should be, too crazy to say that this entire offensive line needs an overhaul. Like, I don't think anyone should be, not up for replacing. I think, honestly, right? I mean, this offensive line was brutal this year, and it's time to see improvements made. We hear it every year how the offensive line stays in the month of May and they're doing extra work and they're gelling, but it hasn't translated over to success on the field. But that's the fact of the matter, and something has to look different, whether it's now a new offensive line coach, and eventually I think we're going to see more new players coming in to really build up the offensive line. But they do have some pieces that I think are probably worth keeping, in all honesty.
I'm interested to see what they do with Josiah Thompson, right? Because that guy's got all the upside potential in the world based on what he was coming out of high school and the good freshman year that he had, all things considered, but he took a massive step back. So is it a case of, well, this guy's damaged beyond repair, or like Lenore Sellers, maybe he just had a coach that kind of took him in the wrong direction this past offseason with Lonnie Teasley? Like that's something else that Clements needs to figure out, and if they don't have what they need out of him, you got to go find a left tackle. That is the most important position on the offensive line, one of the most important positions in all of football. So that's perhaps priority number one, is figuring out what you have in Thompson and if he is fixable from what he did this past year.
Yeah, has to be. He took such a big step back this year. And I feel like most guys you could say that about definitely took steps back. We don't know what would have happened with Casey Henry. He was playing pretty well, then he gets hurt. So you're kind of hoping that you can get the right O-lineman in place. There's a nucleus there that starts with some of the guys that you've had from years past, and hopefully they can live up to more of what they've been in years past. But man, you really do need to take a look in the mirror and kind of figure out who your best offensive linemen are and who you're going out there and replacing.
Coach Clem's going to have his work cut out for him. There is no doubt about that. Speaking about having their work cut out for them, men's basketball going to have its work cut out for them when SEC play starts here coming up in a couple weeks, as they had a rough Saturday over at Colonial Life Arena. We'll dive into that coming up next. To wrap up hour number one, it is the Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Beltry on your Monday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Saturday night, men's basketball back in action after taking the exam week off, and they do pick up the 71-55 win over the Citadel. But, Jack, it was anything but pretty. Just an ugly, sloppy slog of a game against a team that's really not on South Carolina's level. Citadel 361st in KenPom. I believe there's only 365 teams at the at the Division I level of college basketball as of right now. So they escaped, but it doesn't instill a lot of confidence going into tomorrow night's game against Clemson.
No, this is not the type of game you wanted to have. And let's start off with the final exam excuse. Like, newsflash, other teams also had final exams, and Citadel was one of them. I believe that's why the game was pushed back to Saturday night, is because Citadel was finishing up exams during the day on Saturday. So everyone was kind of in the same boat of having exams, and South Carolina, as Lamont Paris put it, wasn't ready to play. And that's just a real bad look if you're the Gamecocks, because you had a week off. And yes, you had exams, but you were also practicing and doing everything to get ready for this game, and you looked really awful. I mean, 3 of 23 from three-point range. Three-point shooting is supposed to be what this team is known for. And what they're known for right now is missing a lot of threes, because they started off 0 for 19 from three-point range. I mean, I don't know what it is. First, it was the tight rims. Then it was having Thanksgiving off. And then it was this, with not being ready to play. I mean, the excuses are only going to go so far until at some point we kind of just accept that maybe this just isn't a very good team. I mean, we're seeing it right now, and we'll see what happens tomorrow night against Clemson. That could change a lot of things if the Gamecocks go into Little John and go beat what will be the best team on their schedule so far this season. And then you get SEC play starting in January, and that's going to be another beast in and of itself. So South Carolina really has, minimal time here to kind of fix things before conference play begins.
Well, and if this was, Paris teams of years past where so much of the offense was not built around shooting three-pointers, then it wouldn't be as high a level of concern. But for this season, when we know that was going to be such a big part of the identity of what they're doing, to be under 30% in 7 out of your last 8 games, that's not going to get it done. And you're right. At the Greenbrier, it was, the rims are too tight. On Saturday, it was, they just weren't ready to play after the week off for for exam and all that. And it's like, is this just going to be the year of excuses? Because if you shoot under 30% against just about anybody in the SEC, when you're a team that's in the top 40 in three-point attempts in the nation, you're going to lose the majority of those games. You don't want to have to rely on some kind of magical night where you're hitting 20 out of 28 or something like that to be a reason why you win, because that's not going to happen very, very often. It's not like they're getting contested with a lot of those threes. They're getting good, clean, open looks. They're just not making them.
You're right. They are getting a lot of clean looks and not making them. Here's the thing that I wonder. The whole not being ready to play thing, is that more of a player issue, or is that starts at the top coaching issue, right? I think it's got to be a player issue, because it seems like the coaching is doing everything it can, at least from what Paris had to say post-game. Yeah. They're trying to do everything they can to put these guys in positions to be successful, but it just comes down to guys going out there and actually playing. I mean, you're getting paid to be here. So, I mean, we can try not to harp on, the players being at fault here, but the fact of the matter is they're the ones missing these shots. They're the ones not playing great. I mean, you expect a better product than this if you're South Carolina, knowing what happened last year. And honestly, right now, I think you could honestly make an argument this team maybe is just about as bad as last year was. We'll see when conference play begins, but they're not looking good. At least last year's team was competitive in most of these games that they lost. Right now, I mean, they're barely above water, I think.
I think it's a delicate balance, because when you have a couple of bad games, then maybe say, okay, that's more on the players and the execution and their preparedness. But when it persists throughout an entire season, that's where you look harder at the coaches and say, okay, it's something you're not doing to get these guys ready. So I don't know where we're kind of at on that scale as of right now, but if this keeps on continuing, then yes, you're looking even more and more at Paris and his coaching staff is saying, okay, is this something you're doing that's not having these guys ready to go?
Yeah, and I just don't know what it is. I mean, it's only December, and we already have all these excuses added up, and I know the Gamecocks are 7-3 right now, but they haven't beaten a quality opponent yet. So I mean, if they don't do it against Clemson, they're going to go into conference play without a high quality win. And I mean, conference play is going to be tough, man. It really is. And so South Carolina has got to get all these issues figured out immediately.
And we'll preview that Clemson game coming up tomorrow morning. That game will be tomorrow night at 7 o'clock pregame coverage, starting at 6:30 right here on 107.5 The Game and 100.3 The Game at Myrtle Beach. This is, again, the last opportunity to get a quality win before conference play starts at the beginning of the year. Coming up in hour number 2, we'll go through the best and the worst of South Carolina football in 2025 as we get set to wrap up the year. It is the Extra Point. He's Jack Feltry. I'm Tyler Head on your Monday on The Game. All right, here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. There's only 10 more days left until Christmas. If you're looking around for last-minute gifts or stocking stuffers, I got the perfect thing for you. How about a Twin Peaks holiday bonus card? If you buy a gift card for someone on your list, they'll also hook you up with a bonus card just for you, because giving feels great, but getting rewarded for it feels even better. Share the gift of crave-worthy food, ice-cold 29-degree draft beers, and good times at Twin Peaks with those holiday bonus cards. As we go through the holiday season, there's going to be sports on every single day. You can go down Twin Peaks and take in all that great sports action with our friends over there down at the Lodge. Grab a 29-degree draft beer, grab some delicious food, and enjoy with our friends over at Twin Peaks. Hour number 2, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. It's still a Reaction Monday because there were things that did happen over the weekend. Not the normal Reaction Monday with the full slate of college football, though later on this week we will get the first round of the college football playoff, Alabama and Oklahoma on Friday night, and then the other 3 games going on Saturday. So we'll preview that a little bit more a little bit later on in the week as we start finding out who exactly is going to win the national championship this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really interesting these next few weeks as we finally, I understand why they don't do the playoff during the week of the Army-Navy game because you had the Heisman ceremony on that same day and whatnot, and logistically it just wouldn't work out. But I'm glad we're getting this next week here of college football with the CFP getting going, and that'll be for about another month. So it's going to be a really intriguing 12-team race.
Yeah, this year's national championship, I believe, let me look at the calendar here.
It's on the 20th.
The 20th? Okay, I think it's next year where it's on the 30 or the 25th, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, we're getting later and later into this thing, and it's if you listen to a lot of people in college football, they don't want this dragging in that deep to a second semester if at all possible. And I don't know if that's something they can fix or not. There's a lot of things in the calendar that need to be corrected, but yeah, definitely different having it last all the way up almost until the Super Bowl now.
Can we just have the people that make these decisions on what the calendar looks like sit down and knock that off the agenda this offseason of let's fix the calendar. Forget the 16-team playoff. Let's fix this calendar first, get it right, because it's ridiculous how messed up it is. And you hear everyone pretty much saying that.
Well, that's a very logical question to ask, but here's the thing. The 16-team playoff makes money. The calendar being fixed doesn't.
I mean, that's true, but the calendar being fixed would solve a lot of issues.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but again, it's operated based on what makes money and what doesn't. So we'll see if they ever come to some solutions when it comes to that kind of stuff. As we wrap up the year here, I want to do this throughout this week. Focus on the best and worst of the year because, and this isn't just for Carolina sports, this goes across college football, pro sports. We'll do all those as the week goes along. There's been a lot of good and there's been a lot of bad for just about everything. And I think it's only fitting that we start off with South Carolina football because, again, that's what our primary focus is, not just during football season, but throughout the entire year. And I'll lie to you, Jack, going through a 4-8 season and trying to find the best things was definitely hard. And I don't want to have to limit this to just plays or games or moments. It can be whatever you want it to be. This can be wide open. It can be a single play. It can be an entire game. It can be a uniform that they wore in one of the games for all I care. But anything that you feel is the best of the year, and this doesn't have to be in any specific order, just kind of generally some of your top best moments, and we'll hit those throughout the week. But we'll start with the best of South Carolina football in 2025.
I'll go with a little bit of everything with these picks just because I kind of feel like that makes the most sense because there wasn't necessarily all great games. Like, quite frankly, there weren't a ton of great games for South Carolina this season. It wasn't a ton of great plays at times, but there were some good moments, and then you have some players who really stuck out that I think I'd be willing to include on this. I'll start with best plays. I honestly think the first drive of the season against Virginia Tech and Atlanta was – God, that was gorgeous. It was perfect. It was perfect to the T of everything you wanted. And then you have Lenoris pummel his way into the end zone, blowing over a Virginia Tech defender to get into the end zone to kick off the season. That felt like the beginning of something special. And then as we later found out, it wasn't. But still, at the time, it was a really cool moment for South Carolina to begin the year.
Yeah, and we obviously had spent the entire offseason wondering about the Shula offense because what we saw in the bowl game wasn't great, didn't instill a ton of confidence necessarily. So, yeah, when they drive down the field and score that opening touchdown, I was like, okay, fantastic. Now, foreshadowing the foreshadowing of that is, well, yeah, Shula was a really great opening drive scripted play caller, but when he finally got off the script after that, that's where things went sideways because unfortunately for a lot of games this year, it's like, man, that opening drive was fantastic. It's all the drives after that were worrisome.
Yeah, no, it totally was. Do you have a moment or play or whatever that you want to start out with here?
So I'm glad you picked the opening drive of the Virginia Tech game, because I want to stay in that same game for one of my biggest moments, and that was the Nick Harbor touchdown late in that game, 64-yarder that ultimately sealed the game for Carolina, because that put them up 24-11 with about 7.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And it's not just from the standpoint of what it meant in that individual game. And I remember tweeting this out after it happened. That was a moment we've been waiting for a very long time, right? This is Nick Harbor's third year at Carolina, and again, we talked about it ad nauseum, especially in his first year. This is a guy that's not natural to the wide receiver position. It's going to take him some time to get to the level that we want him to be, and everybody's saying, well, just have him run go routes, Like, it's not quite that simple. There's more nuance to the position than that. And then this offseason, when he spent the entire time focusing primarily on football, there was reason to be excited. And I think that excitement was confirmed with that touchdown. Now, he should have potentially had a touchdown earlier on in the game, but regardless, he got that big one, huge play, helped him win the game. And again, the anticipation for what his season was going to be was at an all-time high at that moment.
Staying a little bit in that Virginia Tech game for a second, with I think probably one of the bigger surprises of the year was probably Vakari Swain, right? I think, he stepped into the role of South Carolina's punt returner this year, and for the most part did a really nice job. He got off to that phenomenal start with the punt return touchdown against the Hokies in that opening game, and then he had two more in the South Carolina State game the next week. Didn't have another punt return touchdown after that game, but still was very good this year, averaged nearly 16 yards per return this year. I mean, just really dynamic in the punt return game for South Carolina this year, and was definitely a nice surprise to have in that role. So I'd go with him probably as like one of my players, I think, that definitely wowed me this year.
Yeah, and obviously the focus goes to what happened in those first two games with the 3 punt return touchdowns. And the one that he picked up on the ground and still ran in for the score against SC State was one of the most impressive things I've legitimately seen in person at a sporting event. So while the focus is mainly going to be on those punt return touchdowns early in the year, his consistencies throughout the year is something that I do think went under the radar. And yeah, he never had another punt return touchdown after the SC State game, but he helped South Carolina out a lot in that return game, getting good field position and stuff like that. Unfortunately, the offense wasn't able to capitalize as much as you would have wanted him to, but Vakari Swain was a very, very consistent, for the most part, punt returner for this team this year. And the 3 punt return touchdowns in those first two games obviously set the bar really, really high, and he wasn't able to get a fourth one to ultimately break the school record. But that was one of the funner couple of storylines early in the season. Is like, man, how far can this guy go with these this season? Because, again, they're so rare, right? We had gone 2 whole years without South Carolina having a single special team score in general. The last one they had was the block punt against Vanderbilt back in 2023. I can't even remember the last time they had a punt return touchdown before Swain's at the beginning of the season. So they're rare enough, and to have them all happen that close together, especially 2 in one game, was really cool to see.
No, it was awesome to see. It was definitely a highlight for sure to begin the season. What else you got?
So I'll expand into more of a full, well, not even a full game. We can't ignore the first half against Texas A&M, right? Like, as bad as the second half was, and don't worry, that'll show up in the worst here coming up in a minute. That first half, like, especially considering where the team was at that point in time, right? They were on the verge of being out of bowl contention. If they lose that game, that is their 7th loss on the year. They had their back up against the wall. You're going on the road to an undefeated number 3 team in the country, A&M, that hadn't really shown a lot of inefficiencies in the entire year. I'm pretty sure we all picked against them on staff picks that week, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I think only one person. I think Wes may have picked South Carolina to win that game.
And to come out there and play the way they did, and I remember watching that game. We're at O'Hara's, doing our watch party and all that kind of stuff, and just the belief that people had. Yeah, it wasn't going to drastically change the season, would have kept you alive for bowl eligibility, but that was the most hope I think that fan base had the entire year. And again, I'll get to the second half coming up here in the other segment. But like everything went exactly as you needed it to. Your offense looked good, and that was Furry's first game as the play caller, obviously. And A&M was making a lot of mistakes, dropping passes, bad throws by Marcel Reed, turnovers, all those kind of things. It was a perfect storm of a first half that, again, I don't think there was more optimism the entire season than the way people felt at halftime of that game.
No, you're right. I mean, it was just a really nice first half. And it's unfortunate the second half was as dreadful as it was, as we'll get into in the next segment. But I think for me, the following week against Coastal would probably be one, like the best game I think South Carolina's had all year, which I'll mention as one of the better moments. And, I won't dive into it too much because it was a blowout, but let's just say South Carolina played really well in all three phases of that game, besides the blocked punt at the end of the game on defense. That was unfortunate that Coastal blocked the punt, but I think South Carolina kind of exercised some demons a little bit in that game, and that was ultimately the last win of the year.
Yeah, and look, it was a Coastal team that would soon fire Tim Beck after that, and we know they were down a couple of key significant players for that game, namely their quarterback, obviously, Samari Collier, if I remember correctly. But still, there's something to be said about going out there and doing your job, especially coming off the heartbreak of the week before. To go out there and put 50 points on anybody just feels good, right? And it was to the point where we thought, hey, maybe there is something to Mike Furry as the offensive play caller. Obviously, that proved to be incorrect the next week against Clemson. Something else we'll get to coming up here in just a moment. But for at least that Saturday, again, one of the 4 times you got to say it this year, you felt good because you walked out of Williams-Brice Stadium with the win. Unfortunately, the final one of 2025.
You got one more before we hit the break?
That was just kind of the 3. I'm kind of trying to keep it in groups of 3 here.
So did you already hit your third one?
Yeah, I hit my third. So I did Harbor's touchdown, Swain, and the punt returns. We agreed on that one. And then
you agreed
the
on
first
that.
half against A&M. Did you have another one you wanted to throw in there?
No, that was all 3. I didn't realize we both agreed on both.
Okay.
Swain there, which makes sense.
I have a feeling we're going to agree on a lot of these things. I did pull one for the worst coming up next. It's a very specific moment that I think was kind of a microcosm for the entire year, which we'll get into in just a moment. But as we do this for Gamecock football, again, we'll do more South Carolina sports tomorrow. We'll do pro football or pro sports college football and all that kind of stuff as the week goes along. I feel like we're going to agree on some of these at certain points.
No, we definitely will. There's a lot to pick from this.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
So we will transition over to the worst of 2025 and what moments stood out as some of the facepalm moments for 2025 for South Carolina football. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's Howard Head and Jack Beltry with you here on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. And as we'll do throughout this week, we're going to go through the best and the worst of 2025 for Carolina football. We'll do all Carolina sports. We'll do college football. We'll do all sports, pro sports included, as the week goes along, as well as we kind of put a bow on 2025, which unfortunately, as we'll probably get into more tomorrow, for men's sports at least, not exactly the best year. We had a rough men's basketball season. We had a pretty dismal, a historically bad baseball season, and then a pretty close, at least in the modern, like the 21st century, historically bad football season as well.
Yeah, just not a ton of good to talk about with the men's side of sports. It was historically bad, as you put it. That was the best way to put it, Tyler. Just a real rough year. And football, it wasn't as bad as the other two sports, I would say, but still, it wasn't good at all by any means.
Yeah, women's sports doing the heavy lifting this year. And by the way, shout out to Dawn's team for picking up another dominant win yesterday, 95-55 over Penn State, as they continue to cruise this year. Obviously, the one lost Texas on Thanksgiving Day, and excited to see them once they get into conference play coming up here in a couple weeks as well. I think they'll fare maybe a little bit better than the men will.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see.
Getting in now to the worst of 2025 for South Carolina football, and I will put this as like my pinnacle, and again, we're not having to order these, but I will say this is my number one worst moment was the pick six against Clemson, right? Because everything that this team had been through, everything that they'd put this fan base through the entire year, there they were once again with an opportunity with only a couple minutes to go against Clemson. And yeah, they were backed up all the way on their own goal line, but the opportunity was still there to make something happen, drive down the field, and maybe, just maybe, pick up a win against your biggest rival to wrap up the year in some kind of positive way. And if you didn't even get a chance to process it, and Clemson suddenly scores on that pick six. Bobbled play, ball goes off Nick Harbor, ends up in the defender's hands, and he runs it in about half a second, right? It just happened so quickly, and it was such a microcosm for what this season was. Like that to me, and quickly the entire stands cleared out after that, and rightfully so. That was just like the icing on a terrible cake for what had been a rough year.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That was definitely, was that like your specific play that you kind of alluded to?
That is my specific, out of everything bad that happened this year, considering when it happened, who it happened against, the timing of the game, and all that kind of stuff, that to me was the pivotal worst moment of the year for South Carolina football.
I'm going to group a few things together to make up one big, terrible moment for South Carolina this year, and that is the Oklahoma loss, which not so much even about, the play on the field was horrendous that day offensively, but everything that kind of transpired that day with the fire Shula chants after during the game, the fans leaving the stadium early, everything that went awful on the field offensively. The offensive play calling was abysmal this year, and I think that game kind of summed it all up right there of just how bad things had gotten, and I think that was that was probably the lowest point of the year for South Carolina, just considering everything that transpired that day.
That was also a day, of course, you had your interaction with Coach Beamer after the game. I think that's where Coach Beamer lost a lot of good grace with people. Now, again, he's done a lot of good things in this week with getting Kendall Browse as the offensive coordinator, Sellers on his way coming back, that has gotten people excited once again. But I think the fan base was kind of at its lowest point with him in his entire 5-year tenure following that Oklahoma game, not just by the poor display on the field, but the resistance of what was going wrong offensively with Mike Shula. And yeah, he wasn't wrong that he had let go of Lonnie Teasley before that when answering your question, but we clearly saw the offense is more than just a Lonnie Teasley problem with some of the play calls that Shula had on just that day specifically. And I think it was that resistance to acknowledge that really bothered a lot of people. And that vitriol really stayed throughout the rest of the year when it came to how people thought and talked about Coach Beamer.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think, a turning point for the wrong reasons that day, just because I think that kind of woke some people up to the thought like, this season's been pretty terrible. Like it's like there's no going back. Like it was pretty bad at that point, and there was just no recovering from that.
Of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, we can't omit the second half against Texas A&M because as great as the first half was, the second half was equally awful. And once again, as happened so many times this year, despite everything, after A&M got cute on the goal line and fumbled it back to you, you had the ball with your chance to go down and win the game very late, and you couldn't do it. And you failed there on your own end of the field and blew an embarrassing lead. And I've said this a couple times since that game. That's something you're going to have an incredible win to overcome, right? Because you're now known as that team that, because again, nobody set out to watch South Carolina play A&M that day unless you were a fan of the Gamecocks or the Aggies. But when you had a 30-3 halftime lead, guess what? People start tuning in. Say, oh my God, number 3's on the ropes at home. What's going on? Let me check this out. And the nation watched you unravel in real time in that second half. And that is something that's going to stick with you until you go out there and, I don't know, make the playoff next year or something. I think this is something that people routinely go back to saying, oh yeah, South Carolina, didn't they blow that lead to A&M last year?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm honestly going to agree with you on the A&M game as one of the worst moments of the year. That was just so. How can it not be? It has to be. It's arguably number one, honestly, for a lot of people, I feel like. I mean, it was like watching a car crash in real time. It had that feeling of what is going on here. As soon as A&M scored the second touchdown to cut it to, I think it was then a 2-score game after that. It would have been
17-30.
30. Yeah, it would have been a 2-score game.
And that was still in the third quarter. There was a lot of time left.
But that was the second of, I believe it was 4 straight touchdown drives for A&M. So that's when I knew in my head, I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to go South Carolina's way. It's remarkable how you can go from having a tremendous first half to an abysmal second half. I don't get it. The last thing I'll mention, since I do agree with you on that, I think, honestly, there's a lot to pick from. I feel like I got to go with – I hate doing this because I don't feel like it's entirely on him. I really do feel like Lenore Sellers was a total letdown this year. I'm going to be honest. I mean, he just did not perform to the level that anyone expected. I mean, it was a far cry from what he did in his redshirt freshman campaign in 2024. And I know a lot of it was on Shula, but Shula's not the one taking all these sacks and not throwing the ball away. There was a lot of regression this year from Lenoris, and for somebody that was so highly thought of as an all-SEC first-team performer coming into the year, Heisman Trophy hopeful, I feel like he has to be a part of this list, for better or worse, just because of how much he struggled this year.
Yeah, it went from a Heisman hopeful to somebody that the entire nation was like, well, guess he just fell off, basically halfway through the year, and it never really got that much better. And on the topic of Sellers, I'll go to my third point here, a specific moment that, again, kind of a microcosm for what the season had been. 1st and goal on the 2-yard line at Missouri. You're up 14-12 in the third quarter. 2-yard line. Now, yes, Rasul Faison had a horrendous miss on that block. Sellers takes a deep sack. Again, get the ball away. What are we doing here? And South Carolina ends up having to settle for a field goal. And given how that game transpired, how much more valuable 4 more points would have been instead of just the field goal there, who knows? And again, does that change the entire season? I don't know if you win that game. But it was kind of one of those things. And that was a game that we thought Carolina was going to have some trouble with, but it really set the table for what was going to be consistent issues throughout the entire year that we'd already seen parts of that year. But I think that really confirmed, like, man, Sellers is just, there's something off about him this year when it comes to his decision-making, holding on to the ball too long. And that was a play that we referenced for weeks after that because of everything that went wrong and how that kind of unfolded for the rest of the game as well.
Good call there on that play. I forgot about that one. Honestly, you jogged my memory. That was a bad one for sure.
Well, again, there's a lot of moments to point out throughout the entire year, but I'm like, man, that was one that really stuck with us coming away from that game. And again, if you win that game, does that mean you win 7 or 8 games this year? No, probably not. But that moment was so critical for that game, and really not being able to close out the first 5 games of the year in a solid position, because we talked about how critical that was going to be for Carolina, and that was just a moment that just everything went wrong with the blown block, with holding on to the ball too long, taking the sack, and just everything all rolled into one that really encapsulates what this season was.
Yeah, just a bad year and a lot of bad moments, but glad we talked about it, because I'm sure we all feel a lot better now that we've reminisced on the past.
Now that we got that off our chest, again, we'll continue to unpack the best and worst of the year as the week goes along for Carolina sports and all of the sports around the country as well. But coming up next, we'll take a look at what happened on the gridiron over the weekend for the games that we did get the opportunity to watch. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Oh, welcome back in. It is the Extra Points Hourhead and Jack Felcher along with you here on your Monday on the Game, reacting to everything that happened over the weekend across the football landscape. Again, not your typical weekend when it came to college football because we'd moved on from conference championships and we await the start of the college football playoff, but that didn't mean that we didn't have some good action over the weekend. And one thing that did happen was one team in the state did indeed win a national championship.
Oh boy.
Okay, Prairie View A&M must convert or it's over. Down to this, right here. Cam Peters looking, and that's it! South Carolina State held on to win it! They are the HBCU national champions for 2025!
Welcome back in, and there you have it. That was South Carolina State winning the Cricket Celebration Bowl 40-38 over Prairie View A&M in 4 overtimes on Saturday. And perfect candidate for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection, because Prairie View did have a 21-0 lead at halftime of this game. SC State goes on an incredible run to tie things up, force overtime, and then obviously get the stop there when they were in the little 2-point shootout thing to claim another Cricket Celebration Bowl, the first for Chennis Berry as the head coach of the Bulldogs.
He's done a remarkable job there, right? And he had to follow up on a legend in Buddy Pugh, who was, he is a legend at South Carolina State and in the state of South Carolina as a football coach. And Barry's done a really good job. He was at Benedict a few years ago. Now he's at SC State doing some really good things. And SC State was down 21-0 in this game going into halftime. But give them a lot of credit. Responded with a ton of points in the second half and got this game to overtime and ultimately legged it out in the end to win.
Yeah, so big win for them there. Billy Atkins, their quarterback, remember they kind of run that 2-quarterback system going back to when they played Carolina earlier on in the year, did get hurt in that game. Ryan Stubblefield did have to come in and help shoulder the load at quarterback the rest of the game, was able to do that. 15-29, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception to help South Carolina State pick up that victory. And obviously for Chennis Berry, who had spent so much of his time as an assistant coach, did great things at Benedict in terms of them in the postseason at the Division II level and or Division III level, and then coming here to SC State, taking over for a legend and winning the conference 2 consecutive years to start things out, and now not only going to the Celebration Bowl twice, but now winning it in his second attempt. Obviously, the sky's the limit for what he's going to be able to do there at SC State, and I imagine he's going to be there having a lot of success for a very long time to come.
Yeah, he's done a really remarkable job there and continues to really build up a good resume as a head coach, as he's now 46-13 in his career as a head coach.
So obviously, shout out to them. I don't know, does that make South Carolina's schedule a little bit better when you talk about having one national champion on there that you beat earlier on this year?
Well, that's the only team with a head coach that didn't get fired. So, I would say it's a pretty quality win. So,
speaking of wins on Saturday, Navy picked up another win against Army, 17-16 in a grinder of a game, low-scoring affair, as you typically assume Army and Navy are going to be. It took some pretty heroic play by Blake Horvath, their quarterback, to be able to recover a fumble in midair as he's falling back to the ground. Some a key touchdown catch by Eli Heidenreich there late in the game as well to put them over the Army Black Knights, and obviously continue what's been a really great year for Navy, 10-2 on the year.
Yeah, 10-2 on the year, a chance to go get an 11th win in the Liberty Bowl coming up here this month. But yeah, I mean, who doesn't love the Army-Navy game, right? I mean, I love this game every single year. I love that it's a standalone on Saturday in the middle of December after the regular season ends with rivalry week. But yeah, a really good game here as always as Navy comes back to win.
Yeah, the uniforms phenomenal as always. Always look forward to what Under Armour and Nike are going to roll out for that. It wasn't snowing in that game. I think it was actually like in the 40s or something like that. So a warmer than usual Army-Navy game between those two teams, but obviously a fun game to watch. You don't have to have a rooting interest either way, and it's just a hard-nosed, smash-mouth football game that comes down to the last couple of drives there at the very end.
Yeah, and Shane Beamer was in attendance.
I
With
did
his
see
son
that.
Hunter. So
Shane and
that
Hunter
is-
were there, and then they
Yeah.
went to the Eagles game on Sunday.
Yeah, so pretty cool weekend for the Beamer family.
Bowl season also got started over the weekend. You had the bucked up LA Bowl. Washington cruising to a pretty easy victory, 38-10 over Boise State in that one. As I know there's concern about Jed Fish possibly going and taking like the Michigan job or whatever, but Washington going out there and wrapping up what was actually a pretty solid year. They went 9-4. Obviously, a second year in the Big Ten for them, but a respectable season nonetheless for Washington.
I was going to say, pretty good year for Washington, all things considered. This was a team that played in the national championship game 2 years ago, lost its coach, and made the move to the Big Ten. And a 9-4 season, with how loaded the Big Ten can be at the top, I would say Washington's probably at the beginning of those middle of the pack teams, and had a really good year, 9-4, and blows out a team that, in Boise State that just won the Mountain West, had a pretty good year. That's a good way to go into the offseason, I would say, for the Huskies.
So that's how bowl season got started on Saturday. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. We do have some unfortunate news to pass along in terms of a certain Gamecock legend, and we'll get to that on the other side as we do wrap up the hour. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up this hour with some sad news to pass along. And I know a lot of you have probably seen this circulating about on social media and stuff this morning. When it comes to these kind of things, we always want to make sure we are 100% that it has happened before we talk about it. Don't want to have any misinformation or speculate on things that we're not 100% sure on. But now that it's been reported on multiple outlets, we can confirm to you that Gamecock legendary quarterback Steve Taneyhill has passed away at the age of 52. Again, I know it's been kind of making the rounds all morning, but we wanted to make sure that we had it right before we ended up, talking about it on here. And, Jack, obviously Steve is somebody that played before you and I were alive, but when you come here to Columbia, you go to South Carolina, you work here in the city, you quickly learn who Steve Taneyhill was, and that tells you everything you need to know about how important he was to this fan base and this community.
Yeah, definitely a big name here in this town. Definitely a living legend for sure. And it's gone far too soon. Only 52 years old, I believe. I mean, that's just it's sad, but he had a great career at South Carolina over 4 years. Had some really nice moments, but most notably against Clemson. Like, who could forget signing the Tiger Paw? I mean, that was there's some infamous just memories that Steve Taneyhill had here as a Gamecock.
Well, and he was the quarterback that kind of ushered South Carolina into the SEC, right? They had spent this entire time as an independent, and joining the big bad SEC is a tall task for anybody. And look, those teams certainly had their struggles. The first team he was on, 5-6, 4-7, 7-5, and lastly, 4-6 in 1995. But it was a part of integrating into the conference and all that kind of stuff, and was there for that first bowl win, back in the 1994 season. So he obviously played a huge role in that. The numbers speak for themselves, what he was able to do over the course of those couple of years. And the thing that really stands out to people, though, is, and when you go back and watch highlights or read about him, is just the flair that he had, right? Carolina was a pretty, I'd say, inconspicuous.
Career high 67.1% completion rate, 29 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and of course over that time had some big wins over the course of his career, especially against Clemson out there in the upstate.
And again, he's somebody not naturally from here. Obviously, believe he's from Pennsylvania originally, but never really seemed to leave Carolina after this, and obviously had businesses over there and in 5 Points that everybody loves so much. So he's somebody that obviously made his impact initially on the football field, but continued to be a pillar of this community and somebody that's so very well beloved. And he had still been out there. He was on podcasts and shows and stuff like that, always talking about South Carolina and giving us thoughts on it. So a true diehard Gamecock through and through. That again, everybody's already pouring out their memories of him and all that kind of stuff. And again, within the last hour, was confirmed by multiple outlets, which made us comfortable enough to finally be able to speak about it. But a true one-of-a-kind legend for Gamecock sports, and Steve Taneyhill passing away.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely summed it up perfectly. I mean, not much more to say than that. Just an absolute legend for sure.
Yeah, and again, this is predating us. I was born in 1996. You were born in 90. What?
I was born in 2000.
You were born in 2000. Oh, that's right. I am 4 years older than you. So, our way of speaking about Steve Taneyhill is through primarily just watching highlights and stuff from his college career. Again, we obviously know what he's been doing here in the community locally and all that kind of stuff. But when Bill gets in here coming up at 12, Wes and Chris, when they come in here at 11, can speak a little bit more to seeing it through their own eyes, right? Because it's one thing to watch highlights and read newspaper clippings and stuff like that. It's another thing to experience it through your own eyes. And obviously, a lot of people that are listening here to us on 107.5 The Game and around the state have tons of fond memories of what Steve Taneyhill did on the field and that flash and pizzazz and all that kind of stuff that made him so special. So we'll obviously continue to talk about this throughout the day. But it's tough news to wake up to on Monday morning.
Yeah, it's not ideal. obviously it's not the Mondays are already bad enough, but yeah, waking up to this, I'm sure for some folks is going to be especially tough, since I'm sure a lot of them that are listening to us, grew up watching this guy, and some people might have been their first quarterback that they remember at South Carolina.
Yeah.
So I know for us, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good finish your thought.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's it's different because we didn't grow up. We weren't, like you said, we weren't even alive to watch Tannehill, but you hear the stories about him, and just how important he was to South Carolina football.
Yeah, and Kevin Miller of Gamecock Central has got a good write-up on the website over there, and does mark that he still holds the South Carolina record for career completions, career touchdown passes, and single-season touchdown passes, and second on the Gamecock quarterback list in career passing yards at just a tick under 9,000. So it wasn't just the fact that he, again, kind of helped usher South Carolina into the new era with the SEC, but put up some pretty darn impressive numbers during that time period as well, even though some of those teams didn't end up being all that great. He definitely made his mark in the history and legacy of this program.
Yeah, no, he definitely leaves a big legacy for sure. And yeah, I mean, a guy that just he had the iconic mullet. I mean, he's coached in the state of South Carolina as a high school coach before too. I mean, just he's got the group therapy in 5 points. I mean, just this guy's fingerprints are everywhere across South Carolina for sure.
Yeah, and again, the thing that really stands out or stood out about him was obviously the flair, right, and the mullet, and the way he carried himself on the field. And you mentioned signing the Tiger Paw, which is a great moment in the history of that rivalry and all that kind of stuff that, again, it endears him to so many people within this fan base. Because, right, quarterback's supposed to be cool, right? The quarterback is always supposed to be the coolest person on the field. Doesn't always live up to that, but there's no denying that Steve Tannehill was the embodiment of what cool was, and again, gave people a reason to look at South Carolina football in the mid-'90s, even when things weren't going all that well, saying, hey, who's that guy? That guy's pretty interesting looking, and wow, he's slinging the ball around the yard too.
Yeah, I mean, just like we said, absolute legend, and definitely Gamecock Nation. I'm sure we'll miss him a lot.
And I don't have any more details about what exactly happened. I believe he'd been dealing with some illnesses, but don't want to.
I see. Cloninger reported on Post and Courier because he would have covered. I believe he would have covered Tannehill. Maybe not at that point, but he would have been alive to see him play for sure. Been battling cancer for several years.
Okay.
Reported.
Yeah, I thought I had read about that, but didn't want to speculate unless I was for sure on that. But yeah, obviously, 52 is way too young, for anybody, obviously. So again, we'll continue to talk about this throughout the day. If you have any thoughts or memories of Steve Tannehill that you want to share, please do. Firehouse Subs text line, as well as the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, and we'll try and work you in as the day goes along. And again, when Bill comes in here a little bit later on, Jay Phillips later on this afternoon, those guys were obviously here and saw it up close and personal what Steve Tannehill was able to do on the field, what he meant to this community and everything as well. And we'll certainly get their thoughts to share as the day goes along. But again, that's the news that we can confirm that Steve Tannehill passing away today at the age of 52. And that'll wrap up today's edition of the Extra Point Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Up next on your Monday on the Game.
All right, as we wrap up the hour here, I want to talk to you guys real quick about AAA Heating and Air. If you're a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system, then AAA has exciting news for you. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA Heating and Air for a quote or finding them online at Call AAA Today. AAA.com. Tell them Bob and Sherry sent you. At AAA Heating and Air, they've got your back. They offer up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check required. So that's right. There's no need to worry about your credit check score. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you're good to go. Take control of your comfort today by giving them a call, 803-677-1500, and breathe easy again.
Passing of Steve Tannehill earlier on today at the age of 52. And, Jack and I weren't alive to see him play here at South Carolina, so you guys can speak to this better than I can. But no doubt a Gamecock legend, not only on the field but in the community as well, that will certainly be missed.
Yeah, certainly want to send out condolences to, those that were close to Steve Tannehill, friends, family, and really all of Gamecock Nation. And, just for those who, watched him in the mid-'90s, just an absolute legend. And, that I was a kid at the time, so I maybe did not quite have the perspective of, who he was and what he meant, but certainly saw that as I got older, and just what was a legend and was someone who kind of a lot of people, I believe, would compare a little bit to that era's Steven Garcia, just in terms of the brashness in which he carried himself, the confidence in which he carried himself, and kind of just brought a special energy and a special just confidence to the locker room and to the huddle and all those things. And, will be very much remembered for signing the Paul in Clemson, and for basically coming off the bench as a true freshman and helping lead a winning streak for South Carolina his first year in Columbia. So, like I said, just condolences to everybody that was close to Tannehill or, was just affected by Tannehill.
Yeah, and I think, guys, that effect is far-reaching in Gamecock Nation because, Tannehill's a guy that's still very much been around. Like you said, Tyler, he's been in the community. He's a business owner. He's around. Means a lot. Heard from some of the lettermen, just texting with some guys that either played with him or just knew him, right? There's a community among the lettermen, former Gamecock guys, kind of obviously have that special bond. So a lot of the guys have been talking about it this morning, been trading some texts with all of them. And it's a huge loss, man. I mean, you talk to longtime Gamecock fans and just the way that they talk about Steve Tannehill and what some of those wins that he helped author, meant to them, some of the memories that people carry. Wes, you mentioned that moment at Memorial Stadium in the upstate where he's, swinging the baseball bat and he's signing the Paul. Like he had the attitude and that brash personality. He had the long hair, right? And that makes him memorable, but he also very much backed it up with his play, right? I mean, he was a part of a lot of he's part of some program first. You think about the bowl game in 95, but he's also part of some things that just frankly haven't been done again, right? I mean, he still owns some records for Gamecock quarterbacks, completions, touchdown passes, single season touchdown passes. He has 3 of the 7 400-yard passing performances in Gamecock football history. He helped lead the team to their first win over Tennessee in 90 years. Remember that 1992 Tennessee game? He beat Clemson both the times he went up to Death Valley in the upstate. So just so many things that he accomplished over the course of his career that, Gamecock fans, like I said, if you talk to them, guys who are around that era, families, they have so many memories of that they still talk about. I mean, people still in 2025 talk about, hey, you remember when Tannehill did this or when Tannehill did that? He's etched his name in Gamecock lore forever. And, certainly really going to be missed because, it's one thing to do that, but he's been around the program and been around, Columbia and the community ever since then. And he's always going to be a part of it.
Yeah, and he was part of that transition from them going to being independent to being in the SEC. And again, those first couple teams certainly had their share of challenges in terms of getting up to speed with the conference. But for a program that historically had never won a bowl game before, how big that was back in 1995 to win that Carquest Bowl and all that. And like you mentioned, all the records that he still holds to this day. And obviously college football's changed a lot with, the offense being more open with passing and stuff like that. So remarkable that somebody that played 30, plus years ago still is able to hold some of those marks even into the mid-2020s.
Yeah, and I just, like Chris said, I think there's a lot of Gamecock fans who, you just, one of the, I would say the beauty of college athletics is that, you feel like you know these guys, and then if you're a fan, you maybe meet them at some point along the way and share some stories. And, for a lot of us, especially, I mean, I'm trying to think back. My first game as a kid at South Carolina that I remember actually may have been with Tannehill as the quarterback. I'm not quite sure on that, but for a lot of us, you feel that connection to these guys, and you feel like you have lost somebody that was a part of the family, and it is a family in a sense, a greater family. And so I think for a lot of people, I mean, it feels much like when we lost Phil Petty as well a couple of years ago. So lots of Gamecocks mourning right now, and just hate it for everybody involved. Obviously going too young.
Ray wanted to weigh in on the AAA Heating and Air phone line, share some memories of Steve Tannehill himself. Ray, appreciate your call as always, man. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Well, prayers and condolences to Steve's family and to the entire Gamecock Nation. I remember in '92, and it was the first year we joined the SEC, and he was a top recruit. And I mean, people my age remember this, of course. Well, that was our first year in the SEC, Tyler, and we started off 0-5, and things kind of got out of hand. There was actually a player revolt. Well, the next game, which was our sixth game of the season, the coaching staff, Sparky, he made a real good decision here. He decided to start Tannehill. We proceeded to finish the year 5-6. So we lost one game in those last 6 games, and it was a game down at the Swamp, against a pretty good Steve Spurrier Florida team, of course. And I think we lost that game something like 7-9 or 7-10. I mean, we can look back, but we were right there. And I mean, we could have won all 6 games. And, of course, I think it was signing the Tiger Paw, beating Clemson, and it was all of his enthusiasm. I remember he had a game down in Mississippi State where I think he threw for like 6 touchdown passes. And, I mean, it was just phenomenal. And then, of course, the Tennessee victory. That was great. I mean, there was a linebacker named Hank Campbell that made an unbelievable play. Tennessee decided to go for 2 points, but that was a big game. And also, I remember the next year, his sophomore year, '93, and at the time, I'm sure Georgia was ranked highly at the time because it was early in the year. He led us on that game-winning touchdown drive, the famous, Brandon Bennett over the top. And if y'all could somehow dig up and play that, the great Georgia announcer Munson, where he's describing, lay down, you guys, lay down. And he says, Tannehill gives it to Bennett.
Not only because it'll be the first home game, obviously since his passing, but he was also the quarterback his senior year for that team that put up the school record in the modern era for points, 77-14. And guys, he had an incredible season that year in 1995, his senior year, but that Kent State game started just an absolute torrid run by Tannehill. He was 20 of 24 in that game, 263 yards, 4 touchdowns. And the next week at Mississippi State, Carolina put up 65 points. He threw 38 for 44, 473 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then Vanderbilt the next week put up 52, 31 of 40, 354 yards, 5 touchdowns, right? And they were able to cap it off with a win over, just that slate was just tremendous his senior year. And then obviously the CarQuest Bowl, which was a historical moment. So he had an absolute, if you're looking on sportsreference.com and you're seeing all the bold in the game log, that's because he's got, school records that he set. So I think it'd be really neat for the university to honor him before the first game. Hopefully that's something that'll happen. I'm sure they'll put something together, but man, he just did so many great things here in Columbia, and the way he did them too, like he really endeared himself to Gamecock Nation, just not only for his production, but the way he went about it, the attitude he played with, I think people appreciated.
Philly Prince weighs in on the text line. It says, I remember what a moment was when he cut his hair. It was big news amongst Gamecocks.
I mean,
when your hair is that legendary, when you cut it, it makes headlines.
Yeah, and everybody obviously weigh in on the text line there. Give us a call. Great call by Ray, by the way. Just wanted to acknowledge that. Excellent stuff there. And, I mean, when your hair is the subject of, like, the hats that have literally a model of your hair coming out of them.
Yep.
I mean, Steve would have racked up on some NIL type stuff with that, and if it was a different era. But the thing you always, I think, appreciate too about Steve Tannehill, he would do some appearances here and there, and he would tell you how he felt. Like there was not really any holding back. He was gonna let you know exactly where his mind was on things, and you always respect that. He owned Group Therapy, a legendary bar there in 5 Points for the longest time, and then more recently, was partnered up with Jeff, a.k.a. Cox by 90, with the CB18 bar. And so was just, heavily involved in the fabric of, this state and this community as well. So, like Ray said, some guys do, play and then kind of,
sure.
I mean, Tannehill was not from the state of South Carolina, but he really grew his roots here. He's had such a life. people forget this guy coached a lot of high school football in this state and was darn good at it too. And he lived his life very, very, thoroughly, I feel like.
Again, Steve Tannehill passing away at the age of 52. Again, prayers and condolences to not only his family, but everybody that knew him and the community around him here at South Carolina and in Columbia as well. We'll continue to talk about him, obviously, throughout the day, share memories and all that. Let us know your thoughts, 803-404-6100. We'll also talk about some of the other things that happened around the weekend when it came to Gamecock football and some of the news that we did get in regards to 2026. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
All right, folks, allow me to tell you about our friends over at Integrated Media, 803-948-8327. Holidays, Christmas, right around the corner. Why don't you give yourself the gift of Integrated Media? Awesome stuff they can do around your home, whether it is as simple as hanging that TV, helping out with the surround sound in the living room and just upgrading kind of that living space in terms of your tech. Or maybe you've got a basement or an extra room you want to turn into that man cave you've always dreamed of. They can help you do that too. Either going very simple or going all in with the home theater system with the projector, surround sound, and everything in between. For me, it was all about running Ethernet throughout the house and making sure that I had whole home Wi-Fi. For you, it could be just whatever you're dreaming. Also, security and cameras if you want to have that peace of mind around your home as well, and then all integrated into one tablet so you can control it from one spot. Hit up our friends today, Integrated Media. That's at integratedmediainc.com.
Welcome back in. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, and Chris Clark along with you on your Monday here on the game. Again, news of this morning. Legendary Gamecock quarterback Steve Tannehill passing the way at the age of 52. A lot of you wanting to share your thoughts on the Firehouse Subs text line. Start off here. First, Paul says, Tommy Moody, Gamecock Jesus, Gamecock Larry, now Steve Tannehill. It's been a rough couple years for Gamecock Nation in terms of losing a lot of different legends, not only in media but across the sports as well. And yeah, no kidding. And that's just in my short 3 years here so far. All those people have been lost, unfortunately.
Yeah, just sad. I think it kind of starts to remind you like you are getting older personally for like a lot of us when these people you watched play or people you got to know in the case obviously of Tommy pass away. So just obviously very, very sad. And, we know the scary situation that happened with Connor Shaw recently as well.
Very true.
So,
yeah,
we could have been having a different conversation on that, as we know. So, it's tough, man.
On a more lighthearted note, JJ in Columbia says Tannehill had the Pavia swagger without all the real jerky parts.
Yes.
In the slightest by it.
Chat GPT has apologized to you.
Yes, apparently.
So.
The M-dashes gave it away.
Yes.
The swagger without the arrogance, I guess, would be the better way to describe Steve Tannehill. And you're right. If NIL would have been around back in the mid-'90s, my goodness, just on the hats alone, what he could have capitalized on that.
Would have been just racking up. So it stinks, man.
Yeah.
It really does.
It does. And again, appreciate you guys weighing in. Firehouse Subs text line, AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We'll continue to talk about this as the day goes along. Big news of the weekend, though, in reference to Gamecock football, in reference to South Carolina's quarterback Lenore Sellers, with the intentions of returning. I want to make sure I specifically say this right. Being reported first by Pete Thamel and Pete Nakos of On3, that they are nearing finalizing a deal to bring Sellers back for 2026. So, like anything, like we talked about last week with the offensive coordinator search and Kendall Briles, until it's officially announced, nothing's done yet, but we're trending towards that being the case for Sellers to be back next year, which is obviously huge positive for South Carolina.
Yeah, it is. And, I think, guys, with this whole situation, there always, like, ebbs and flows behind the scenes to something like that a lot of times maybe don't even make it out publicly. And, I'm sure, Chris, there were times where it was a pretty frustrating season, I think, for Lenore Sellers at times, as you would imagine. However, the interesting thing is that I feel like for 2 straight off seasons, or 2 straight, really even it was happening during the season, you had people with no actual connections to Lenore Sellers just shipping him on off to other schools and just assuming he was going to leave. And, now I do think this shifted as the year progressed, but from every information I always got, it was a shift away from leaving to go to the NFL draft, which, everything I was told preseason this year was like, hey, if Sellers has the year, frankly, everybody expected him to, then yeah, he's probably going to be a top 10 pick, and he'll probably, you have to go at that point. He'll probably go. And that shifted as the year went on, but I know about the rumors. I know about the stuff that other people put out. I don't know. It's just kind of annoying how much people have just tried to ship him off to other schools. And even the reaction to some of that, what a decision to come back. Well, yeah, he did have he did not have the season he expected, we expected, anybody expected. Of course he didn't. But he put himself in a position to be talked about as a potential top 10 pick also at the University of South Carolina, right?
That's right.
Why are we pretending like he came in highly, 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 projected, and then, he fell off because he was at South Carolina? No, he had a great year at South Carolina and a elite half of a year at South Carolina, and then he did not have the year he needed to last year for a variety of reasons. Some on him, some not. So, I mean, maybe, Chris, we can still have a nuanced conversation about it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to. Yeah, it is really irritating because, look, it's good. This is sports, and just like everything else, people are going to have opinions. Well, I think that LaNorris will come back or won't, or he should or he shouldn't. But a lot of the stuff being thrown out, even by some media members, Wes, just, well, this will probably happen. And you're sitting there looking at it going, well, we're trying to cover this story, and that's actually not what's happening at all behind the scenes. Sellers is a different type of kid. If he wanted to bolt for, money, for instance, or for some level of prestige at some logo program, he could have done that last year, right? And I know the circumstances are different because it's a new year. South Carolina and Sellers, as you just said, Wes, didn't have the year that they wanted. But I think there's a bunch of different things at play. First, it's just Sellers and his family and the way that they operate. They y'all remember the SEC special that they did, the what was it called? Any Given Saturday?
The Netflix series?
Yeah, the Netflix series. Different type of kid. Was never a situation where he's looking around trying to, like you said, Wes, get the highest offer, go to a logo, quote unquote, brand name program. While outsiders may think, or just kind of the college football world may say, yeah, that's probably what he'll do because it's the NIL era, it's the transfer portal era. That's not really been his intention. Like you said, you got to take care of your guys. You got to make sure that, you wanted to make sure he likes the offensive coordinator hire. You got to make sure that you build the roster around him and all those things. But this, I think, is something that internally South Carolina's felt pretty good for a while about getting done.
Obviously, this changes the way we look at Kendall Briles coming here as the offensive coordinator. We'll hear what he had to say on Friday with his introduction coming up next in reference to Sellers as we continue on with the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday on the Game.
No, not within the last couple of weeks. Once it got where we knew this thing was pretty much done, then had an opportunity to speak with him on the phone. But what was the second part of your question? How would he fit in this offense? It's really more the offense fitting around him. I mean, he's a quarterback. He's touching the ball every single snap. I'm not going to go out there and ask him to do something he's not great at. So we're going to build the offense around him and the rest of the personnel and do the things that he's really good at. And so we want him to be comfortable. Like I said, he's out there with people, running full speed at him, probably in a bad attitude and trying to get after him. So we're going to do the things that he feels really comfortable with, and I'm excited to work with him. Seems like a great kid.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris with you on a Monday. That, of course, the voice of a new offensive coordinator for the Gamecocks, Kendall Briles, as part of his introduction on Friday. And before we get into the specifics of sellers within this offense, Wes, you were not along with us last week for this whole saga of Briles and everybody being hired. So I want to get your thoughts on the ultimate hires that were made that were introduced on Friday.
Yeah, man, I think with Kendall Briles, you have for the first time during the Beamer era, you have an OC who you have a true college resume of. You know what I'm saying? And, you have a clear, all right, this guy's been at a bunch of different places, and the offense hasn't even looked exactly the same at any of those places. The personnel has been different, but the offense has found a way to be productive at pretty much all those places. And so, I think you can go back pretty far, man. You look at, obviously, people have their different opinions about like a Mike Bobo, but Bobo, who was here for 1 year and then had the chance to stay and then left. Now, he had a resume, right? This was a bona fide play caller. This was a guy who, and even love or hate his system, I think you could, if you watch those games, you could kind of think through how he was layering things together, trying to run plays to set up other plays. And, just in terms of a play caller who has done it at this level and done it in college and done it consistently over time, he is certainly the most accomplished OC that South Carolina's had since Bobo, and really even if you go before Bobo, there was another stretch of guys that, Brian McClendon was calling plays for the first time in his career. Kurt Roper had, it had not gone well at Florida, and everybody was supposed to believe that, hey, if I'd have hired Roper at the beginning of my time at Florida, then I'd still be at Florida, is what Muschamp kind of sold everybody on. So, I think this is a big deal because South Carolina just traditionally has not had a ton of OCs that have the resume that Kendall Briles possesses. Even when you just listen to him talk, he just sounds like a ball coach. He sounds like a guy who has not overconfidence, but just kind of an innate confidence in what he wants to do and what he wants this offense to be. And I like the fact that for the first time in a while, you do have a little bit of just a system. You have an identity. Now, the system has molded itself and evolved depending on the personnel. So I think that's a fine line. You don't want the system to be so rigid that it doesn't mold to the ability and the talent and the skill set of the players you have.
Right.
But you also ultimately want to have a foundation. You want to have a system where you kind of everybody knows what you're recruiting to, right? Everybody knows kind of what you're looking for in players for them to be a fit. And then you kind of just go from there. So I think it's one of the biggest hires of Beamer's time here. Obviously, we talked, Chris and I reported several times, like, hey, Beamer understands how important this hire is. And, they got the job done. I think Stan Drayton is a grand slam of a hire at running backs coach. Let's be honest, South Carolina's had to fire 2 running backs coaches. So that's a position that I think they clearly felt they needed to upgrade and needed to kind of hit on. And then, Randy Clements, I think the thing there, if you look at the output at, the places he's been, it's mostly been good. It's been really good when he's been with Kendall Briles. Yeah. And I think, similarly, this is one of the few times in recent memory that South Carolina has gone out and hired an O-line coach who is tied to the OC, tied to the play caller. So it very much seems like Drayton was Beamer's hire, and Randy Clements, a.k.a. Clem, was Briles' hire. So, yeah, Chris, the other thing I was about to say, you can't expect it to get better overnight. However, that's what I would say in a general sense. Most of the time, Briles' offenses have actually very much improved the offense he has taken over in his first year installing his scheme and calling plays.
Yeah, I think good point, and three things there. So, number one, he does have that track record. You know, if you go back and look at some of his stops, where was the team that he got to in year one, the prior campaign, and then what did they end up doing that season? Now, frequent, and this is normal, doesn't mean that was their best year under Kendall Briles, but he was able to improve. He has been able to improve several programs from the year before he got there to year one. You know, point number two, Tyler, you brought this up last week. I hate to say it, but you don't have that high of a bar to clear in some aspects to improve, right? I mean, South Carolina is at or towards the bottom of the conference in the country statistically. And it's not just the stats, right? The stats are ugly. Yeah, stats can be liars. But when you add up the key metrics that you basically have to do to be pretty good offensively, they're not there. And then you just look at scoring, they're not there either. This is a team that went through most of the season, not just a game or two, most of the season, and you're sitting there going, this team has not gotten to 350 yards yet. You know, we all talked about that constantly throughout the season. And the third thing, I mean, you got no option, right? Like, that's why a change was made, not just as offensive coordinator, but running backs coach, offensive line coach. When things go that poorly offensively, you've got to shake some things up. And Wes, you just went through the hires. These are guys that have been accomplished. You've got an O-line coach who knows the OC system like the back of his hand. They've worked very well together for years and years in the past. You don't have to wonder, hey, how's the O-line coach and the OC, like, are they going to be able to integrate and work well together? You know, Kendall Briles doesn't have to teach Randy Clements' system. He knows it. He's been in it. Frankly, he's probably been in the system longer than Kendall Briles when you really think about it, going back to Stephenville High School. So now, does that automatically mean that the production's going to be better or that it's going to be markedly better? No, of course not. But there are some reasons to think that it can be. You know, just as a baseline, can it be a little better? And can you make a pretty sizable jump in year one? I think that's why people have been so frustrated is I think most fans don't look at the offense last year and say, okay, that's the most loaded roster in the SEC. They should be scoring 42 points a game. But I think people recognize there's more talent on this roster last season and projected to go into next season. There's enough talent to not be at the bottom of the conference in the country nationally in a lot of these categories. And I think there's a lot of hope that Kendall Briles, based on, again, that track record, can come in and get that done.
Guys, I like to use fourthandshort.com as a reference. It kind of has a lot of just analytics and stats that go beyond the basics. And, you know, one area I think South Carolina has really struggled with over the last few years, honestly, probably before that, is what the analytics nerds call success rate. Mm-hmm. But what really, if you dial it down, is just down to down, do you stay on schedule? You know, are you staying out of second and long, which keeps you out of third and long? And, you know, you got to go all the way back. Now, Florida State, when he was there, this is all the way back in 2019, was not good in this metric. However, you got to go that far back. The last 6 years across two different programs, and we know at TCU he was kind of having to run, I would say, a melding of his system and Sonny Dykes' system. The worst any of those teams finished in success rate was 50th in the country. Beyond that, you got 46th, 41st, 30th, 19th, and or 22nd in the country, and then 19th in the country in 2023. So you're talking about being, you know, in the top definitely in the top half, but in most cases the top third, top quarter of the country in terms of just staying on pace, on schedule from a down-to-down basis. Most of his years at those two stops, except for one at Arkansas, you're in the top 40 in points per opportunity, which basically is the measurement of something we saw South Carolina struggle with this year, getting into opponent territory and then not being able to get points out of it. I think this metric defines it as you have a first down inside the 40 of your opponent. Do you score or do you not? And, so I think there are some things that his scheme will automatically bring to the table that you can maybe count on improving, that will make the overall picture improve on offense. And I know we got to go to a break here.
Yep.
It's just a great fit for Sellers, I think, to be completely honest.
Sure, and we'll talk more about that to wrap up the hour. Up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you on your Wednesday. It's Monday. I don't know what day of the week it is anymore. On your Monday here, wrapping up the hour.
Not even
on
close,
the game.
Tyler.
Not even close. I know. I got.
Why'd you make it Wednesday?
I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe I'm already halfway to Christmas already. I don't know.
There you go.
It's working on that. Anyways, we've been talking this morning about Lenora Sellers coming back for 2025, and we'll get more specifically into kind of the wish list for the transfer portal coming up tomorrow. But this alleviates probably something you're going to have to do in the portal if Sellers doesn't come back, and that's getting a proven quarterback. And that didn't necessarily mean you had to get out there and get somebody that was going to start day one, but somebody with some experience to bolster the room, because without Sellers, you have three guys, at least on scholarship that is, that have never started a game in their college careers. And that would have been quite a task to go through the offseason figuring out who that was going to be. So that's one box you don't have to check in terms of the transfer portal, is getting a quarterback, because you have your guy coming back. And we'll see what obviously Kendall Briles is able to do from a development standpoint, hopefully undoing a lot of the things that Mike Shula had altered with Sellers this past season.
Yeah, I think, this if you look at what he has done, he being Kendall Briles at pretty much all his stops, and the offense has kind of been molded to the personnel, but he's probably going to get in here and take a look at Sellers and be like, man, I can do a lot with this guy's talent. And, I think a lot of what we saw, frankly, down the stretch from Mike Furry and from Sean Elliott, when those guys got more heavily involved in the offense, there's a lot there that is similar to what I believe Kendall Briles will look at this thing and want to do. And, we did see, obviously, there were some second halves there that South Carolina wants back, but we saw a boost, I feel like, in the overall play of Sellers and the overall play of the offense during that stretch. Now, again, you're talking about having an actual system as opposed to sort of having to just make it up as you go to an extent, and having to pull from what the offense had been all year and pull plays that you feel like fit and stuff like that. You're going to have a true, like, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to install this thing, but we're going to build it around his ability. And here's the thing, guys. I mean, it hasn't changed. The fact that Sellers has as much talent as anybody in the country, there's a reason why he was a projected top 10 pick. There's a reason why some people said he was going to be the first pick. Now, he didn't play up to that standard this year, but the ability is there. And, let's be honest. This is not a kid that seems overly affected by the outside noise and all the talk, but he went from being nationally a relatively unknown guy to being one of the guys who was the talk of the college football world. He's getting pulled in 1,000 directions. He's getting pulled in a bunch of different NIL directions during the offseason. I mean, life kind of hits you pretty fast there if you're Lenora Sellers last year. I think an opportunity to reset, get back to who he is, refocus, new play caller, new guy in the room. I think all this could be very, very good for Lenora Sellers. Chris, a lot of times people forget, not a video game. These are still humans. They're still kids. You are not guaranteed success. Like, you got to go do it. And I think a chance to kind of reset sometimes is good for us all.
Well, and I think, a couple things there. I agree with you, Wes. And to one more point on that, when everybody expected, okay, after how Sellers finished the 2024 season, the reason for excitement was like, man, if that was his first year as a starter, as a redshirt freshman, what is next year going to look like? Well, we got the answer to that, and it wasn't what, as we've been saying, what anybody envisioned. So can you get him back to playing like that? But then can you also add to that? Can you help him to get back to that level of confidence, that level of playmaking ability? But can you get him better at some of the things that, even in that really, really good redshirt freshman campaign in 2024, some of the things that you wanted to see growth from, can you get him there too? Like, can you get him back to where he was and to take the next step kind of all in one fell swoop? I think that's possible. I think that's the point.
We'll dive into what Carolina does need to do in the portal a little bit coming up tomorrow as we cap off the 2025 year. as this week rolls along. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show, myself and Bill Gunner up next on your Monday on the Game.